So the next allegation Mr. Myers asked Lucy Letby about was another of murder, which relates to the third alleged victim in the case, baby C. Now, you might remember that he was tiny. He weighed less than 2 pounds when he was born by caesarean section 10 weeks early in June 2015. The nurse looking after baby C described him as the smallest baby that she'd ever seen.
There'd been problems with his mother's pregnancy, which meant blood flow to the placenta was abnormal, so he was only half the size he should have been. Doctors became worried he might be stillborn, so despite his size, he was delivered early at 30 weeks.
He was immediately placed in Nursery 1, but jurors have heard evidence that he was a feisty little baby, and although small, weighing less than a bag of sugar, he was doing well.
That's right, although he had a few problems with his breathing and was being treated for pneumonia, doctors thought he was getting better. In fact, he was considered stable enough for his breathing support to be reduced and for them to start feeding him.
But on the evening of June 13th, 2015, just minutes after his first feed at 11 o'clock that night, he suddenly collapsed, causing his tummy to balloon and to crush his lungs. He died several hours later in the early hours of the following day. And just to remind you, this was 4 nights after the collapse of baby B and 5 after the death of baby A. So that's 3 serious incidents in the space of a week on the unit.
It's the prosecution case that Lucy Letby was frustrated on this shift because she'd been allocated a baby in Nursery 3 to look after. The jury have previously heard that Lucy Letby preferred looking after the sickest babies on the unit in Nurseries 1 and 2. They were shown text messages Lucy Letby sent to a colleague while on that shift, explaining that she wanted to throw herself back into Nursery 1 following the death of baby A few days earlier. She said she'd been taught during her placement at Liverpool Women's Hospital that this was the best way to cope, and she was annoyed because the shift leader had put her in Nursery 3 instead. And Mr. Myers asked her about these text messages.
What are you getting at? What do you mean?
That I wanted to get back into the unit and back into looking after babies.
Why did you want to get back in?
That's what I was taught at Liverpool Women's Hospital. When babies pass away, the way to overcome that is to get straight back into the environment and carry on.
Had you been knocked a bit by what happened?
Yes.
Is there anything in those texts that would make you want to attack a child?
Not at all, no.
You talk about how you learned at Liverpool Women's Hospital how you deal with the loss of a baby. Is that something you wanted to happen?
Not at all, no.
Why are you talking about the support you needed and the way to deal with it? Why was that coming up?
Because of what happened to baby A.
Was that something you wanted to happen again?
No.
Do those messages have anything to do with baby C?
No, not at all.
She told the court that she had little recollection of events leading up to the resuscitation of baby C, who she said collapsed shortly after his feed. She said she was relying on the medical notes, and it was difficult to remember because it was so long ago, and she'd looked after hundreds of babies in her time as a nurse.
Mr. Myers said medical charts from the time showed that she was doing observations and feeding the 2 other babies she was looking after in Nursery 3 around 11 p.m.
Now, at this point, there was a small pause in the proceedings in Court 7 when Lucy Letby stopped partway through an answer when she appeared to be quite startled by a noise in the courtroom.
Mr. Myers noticed that she'd been distracted and asked whether she was able to continue. "Yeah, I'm very easily distracted," she said. Mr. Myers asked her if she'd always been like that, to which she replied, no. Previously, the jury have been told that Lucy Letby is easily startled by unexpected noises as a result of post-traumatic stress, which she claims was caused by her arrest.
So after this short pause in proceedings, Mr. Myers asked her to stay focused, and he got back to taking her through the allegations. And he asked her what she remembered about the run-up to baby C's collapse.
Sophie Ellis, who was baby C's designated nurse, told jurors when she gave evidence for the prosecution that she twice popped away from his cot side briefly, just before he collapsed, and both times she returned to find Lucy Letby beside his incubator. She told the court she remembered Lucy Letby saying to her that his heart rate and SATs had dropped.
But Lucy Letby denied being in Nursery 1. She said Nurse Ellis called her to help only after baby C collapsed. Here's Mr. Myers again.
Do you recall who called you to help?
I believe it was Sophie Ellis.
Once you were called to help, what happened next?
I do not have a lot of independent memory, but I believe I asked Sophie to put out a crash call, and Mel Taylor was with baby C. Mel was in nursery when I arrived.
Nurse Sophie Ellis says you said he just dropped his heart rate and sats. Do you recall saying anything like that to Sophie Ellis?
No.
Do you have any recollection of being in nursery 1 prior to the alarm sounding?
No.
She told the jury she remembered helping with the unsuccessful resuscitation attempts of baby C, but she couldn't recall having any contact with his parents afterwards.